Welcome to the deep dive. We have a really fascinating mission for you today. We're going to unpack the highly complex, pretty dramatic, and honestly incredibly revealing Q4 2025 financial results of the e-commerce giant Coupang.
Right. And to do this properly, we're pulling from a pretty dense stack of primary sources.
That's
We're
okay.
working our way through their Q4 2025 financial presentations, the official earnings releases, and the full management earnings call transcript, which is dated February 26, 2026.
Yeah, and I think what makes this particular session so gripping is that this is absolutely not your standard corporate earnings review. Not at all. We're looking at a real-time case study here. Here's a massive retail juggernaut, a company experiencing just absolute hypergrowth in new markets, while simultaneously, and this is the crazy part, trying to navigate a high-profile, multi-million user data incident. And that happened right in the middle of their most critical quarter.
Exactly. It's a unique convergence of events, really. You have the peak physical performance of a massive logistics empire clashing directly with a severe digital vulnerability, and it forces us to ask questions not just about retail or margins, but about trust, security, and the sheer complexity of operating at this kind of massive scale.
Right. So I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine you spent years and billions of dollars building a machine that perfectly delivers everything you need. It anticipates your needs. It gets your groceries to your door the next morning. It functions almost like magic. And then a single wrench gets thrown into the gears by an insider. How does a company recover the trust of millions of people while still trying to conquer brand new global markets? Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, to understand the financial numbers we'll get into later, we really have to start with the incident itself, because it is unequivocally the defining event of the quarter. During the earnings call, Coupang's general counsel, H.L. Rogers, laid out the facts as determined by comprehensive third-party forensic investigations. A former employee illegally accessed data from over 33 million user accounts.
33 million. I mean, that is just a staggering number of accounts to be exposed,
Yeah.
especially in a country like South Korea. That's a huge percentage of the population. But when you look closely at the source material, the details of what was actually retained paint a very specific picture, don't they?
They do, yeah. According to the investigation, while 33 million accounts were technically accessed, data was only retained from approximately 3,000 users in Korea and literally exactly one user in Taiwan.
Wow, just one in Taiwan. But still, the nature of the data is a critical piece of this puzzle. The information accessed included basic contact and order information, so names, emails, phone numbers, delivery addresses, and limited order history. But here's the kicker. Building lobby codes were accessed for 2,609 user accounts in Korea.
Right, and we have to pause there because building lobby codes for an e-commerce company that promises door-to-door delivery is a highly sensitive piece of operational data.
Exactly. It's how the delivery drivers get into these massive apartment complexes to leave packages right at your doorstep. If you are a customer living in one of those buildings, knowing a rogue employee has the code to your front door it's incredibly unsettling.
It is unsettling, absolutely. But from a strictly corporate risk modeling perspective, we have to look at what was not taken. The third-party forensic and cybersecurity experts, including Mandiant, by the way, confirmed that no highly sensitive data was ever accessed. There was no financial data stolen, no passwords, no government-issued ID.
Which is the silver lining here.
A massive silver lining. If financial data or passwords had been compromised at that scale, we would be talking about a catastrophic business failure, potentially an existential threat to the company's liquidity and legal standing. Because it was limited to contact and order info, the fallout, while severe, is an issue of customer trust and mitigation rather than a total systemic collapse.
I'm really curious about the anatomy of the attack itself, though. Coupang brought in Palo Alto Networks, and their conclusion was super notable. They stated that this was not a systemic failure of Coupang's security measures, and that their security controls align with industry standards. Instead, this was a targeted attack executed by a malicious former employee exploiting a valid software development process.
Yeah, and this is the nightmare scenario for any chief information security officer. When you operate a digital platform at the scale of Coupang, you have to have software developers who have access to the back-end systems. They have to build, maintain, and update the infrastructure.
They need the keys to the castle to do their jobs.
Precisely. This former employee leveraged inside knowledge of those systems. It highlights a universal vulnerability in the tech industry. Your systems can be completely fortified against outside hackers, but defending against someone who already has the map and the key as an insider is an entirely different challenge. You can build the thickest vault door in the world, but it doesn't matter if the architect of the vault decides to walk out with the contents.
That's a great way to put it. And Coupang's management stated on the call that they view this as a crime committed against the company and its customers. They are pursuing prosecution of the former employee to the fullest extent of the law. They also noted that the specific method of access was closed and remediated in November of 2025 and no longer poses a risk. Plus, they are actively monitoring the dark web with zero confirmed instances of the data being exploited so far.
Which is standard operating procedure for an incident response of this magnitude. You patch the hole, you monitor the fallout, you call the authorities. But regardless of the technical remediation and the legal posturing, the psychological damage to the consumer base is immediate. You can't patch human panic.
You really can't. The sources describe exactly what happened when the news broke. Customers started deleting their accounts en masse. They were removing their saved payment methods, changing their passwords. It was a massive wave of panic. And Coupang's response to this was unprecedented in its scale. In late December, they announced a $1.2 billion customer compensation program.
$1.2 billion. They launched this on January 15th, offering vouchers to customers who were notified of the incident, which they could redeem toward future Coupang purchases. And from an operational standpoint, choosing vouchers over direct cash settlements is a highly calculated move.
How so? I mean, beyond just keeping the money in-house.
It forces re-engagement. If you give a customer cash, they might take it, deposit it, and never come back to your platform. If you give them a high-value voucher, you are incentivizing them to open the app, browse the selection, and experience the friction-free delivery one more time. You are essentially paying to reacquire your own customer and remind them of the platform's value proposition.
I want you to reflect on your own digital habits for a second. If an app you rely on every single day suffered a breach, how quickly would you abandon it? And would a voucher be enough to win you back? Or is the convenience so ingrained in your routine that you'd stay regardless? That $1.2 billion compensation program is a massive financial band-aid, and it leads us directly into the reality of their Q4 balance sheet. Because when you look at the macro picture for 2025, it feels like a victory lap until you hit December.
Looking at the full year 2025 summary, Coupang looks practically bulletproof. They posted $34.5 billion in total net revenues. That's an 18% jump year over year on an FX-neutral basis.
And to understand how impressive that 18% is, we have to contextualize it against the broader e-commerce market right now, which is seeing sluggish single-digit growth globally. Coupang is aggressively taking market share. But the full-year numbers totally mask the sheer volatility they experience at the end of the year.
They do. The fourth quarter tells a completely different story. Net revenue was $8.8 billion, but their core product commerce segment decelerated sharply to 12% growth on an FX-neutral basis. Considering they were cruising at 18% in Q3, that's a heavy drop.
It's the equivalent of slamming the brakes on the highway. Gaurav Anand, their CFO, was surprisingly candid on the call about the timeline. He broke it down week by week. Going into December, they were comfortably holding a 16% growth rate. Then the news of the breach breaks, combined with some holiday calendar quirks, and their growth plummets to 4% in January.
A drop from 16% to 4% in a matter of weeks is brutal, especially when your operations are calibrated for peak holiday volume. You can't just pause the leases on your fulfillment centers or lay off thousands of drivers for a few weeks while customer panic subsides.
This is the critical mechanism behind their Q4 margin contraction, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Coupang operates a massive physical infrastructure network. Those are heavy fixed investments. When you plan for a 16% growth rate in the critical Q4 holiday quarter, you staff up. You stock inventory. You secure middle-mile logistics capacity. If consumer panic suddenly causes your top-line revenue to evaporate, your fixed costs don't magically disappear.
You are still paying for the warehouses.
You're paying for the warehouses, the sortation centers, and the delivery fleet, but you have far less revenue coming in to cover those costs. It's an operational vice grip.
And we see the exact mathematical output of that dynamic in the bottom line. In Q4, Coupang reported a net income loss of $26 million. That is a $182 million drop year over year compared to Q4 of 2024. Their gross profit margin was 28.8%, down 248 basis points year over year, and their adjusted EBITDA margin was 3.0%, down 226 basis points.
The deleveraging is perfectly modeled there. It's a textbook example of negative operating leverage, and it cascades directly into their cash flow. The sources show their free cash flow dropped by $489 million year over year, ending at $527 million for the full year.
Gauravanand explained that this severe drop was primarily due to the data incident causing a short-term working capital hit right in the crucial Q4 quarter. Can you break down that working capital hit for us?
Right, so imagine the physical flow of goods. When sales suddenly drop from a 16% trajectory to a 4% trajectory, your inventory physically piles up in the warehouses. The cash you expected to cycle through the business by selling those goods gets tied up. You still have to pay your suppliers based on your pre-negotiated terms, usually 30, 60, or 90 days, but you aren't collecting the cash from the end consumer because they stopped buying.
The conveyor belt essentially backed up.
Exactly. Add to that the fact that they were already increasing their capital expenditures, buying more equipment, building more infrastructure, and you get a severe squeeze on the cash flow. Cash is going out to suppliers and construction crews, but it's not coming in from shoppers.
But I'm looking at their balance sheet, and even with that $489 million hit to free cash flow, they still maintain over $6 billion in cash. So while the working capital hit was undoubtedly painful, it's not a liquidity crisis. They have the war chest to absorb this shock and keep operating without having to tap debt markets under duress.
Which is the power of a strong balance sheet. It's a fortress, which is what allows them to implement a $1.2 billion voucher program without blinking. And honestly, despite all of the chaos and the panic in December, the underlying resilience of their core business metrics is actually quite astonishing.
That's where the story pivots, because even with the data breach panic, their product commerce active customers still reached 24.6 million in Q4. That is up 8% year over year. Yes, it was down slightly from the 24.7 million in Q3, but growing 8% year over year through a major security scandal shows the sheer gravity of their ecosystem.
The anchor of that ecosystem is the WOW membership. Gauravanand noted that while they did see a spike in churn in December, meaning people actively canceling their memberships in protest or fear, the vast majority retained it, and their Q4 spend actually increased double digits year over year.
Wait, spend increased among the remaining members?
It did. And more importantly, he noted that recently both churn and new signups have returned to historical stable levels. The panic was acute, but it was brief.
This proves why subscription revenue is the absolute bedrock of modern retail. When a crisis hits, a transactional customer will easily drift away to a competitor. But a subscriber, someone who pays a recurring fee for benefits like free delivery, exclusive pricing, and streaming content, has a much higher switching cost. They are deeply embedded in your world.
The friction to leave is just too high.
Right. The fact that WOW member spend increased despite the macro issues shows how incredibly sticky that platform is.
I want to highlight a specific piece of data from the Q4 earnings presentation deck that illustrates exactly why this business model is so powerful. Slide 3 tracks the spend per customer by cohort in Korea. It's a visual representation of customer loyalty.
The headline on that slide is literally, older cohorts continue growing fast. Newer cohorts growing faster.
If you look at the 2020 cohort or the 2021 cohort, they don't just maintain their spending level. Every single year they are on the platform, their total gross spending increases. Year 1, year 2, year 3, the lines on the graph just keep going up and to the right. It's almost compounding.
It means Coupang isn't just a leaky bucket where they have to constantly acquire new users to replace the ones leaving. They are making their existing users increasingly dependent on the ecosystem year after year. As they add more selection, as the delivery gets faster, customers shift more and more of their wallet share to the platform.
When their CEO, Bom Kim, says they want customers to wonder, how did I ever live without Coupang? This cohort chart is the mathematical proof that the strategy is working. It's not just a marketing slogan, it's a verifiable financial reality. And a huge part of how they are expanding that selection and capturing that wallet share is through FLC fulfillment and logistics by Coupang.
Let's break down the mechanics of FLC. Coupang has spent years building a massive high-speed logistics superhighway across the country. Huge warehouses, automated sorting, thousands of delivery vehicles. For a long time, only Coupang's own first-party retail products could drive on that highway.
But with FLC, they have opened the on-ramps to hundreds of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses.
Exactly. These are merchants who could never afford to build their own logistics infrastructure. But now, they can put their products onto Coupang's network, and suddenly, A small, independent brand can offer the exact same lightning-fast rocket delivery as Coupang's own inventory.
And the margin dynamics here are fantastic for Coupang. When Coupang sells a first-party product, they have to buy the inventory, hold it on your balance sheet, and take the markdown risk if it doesn't sell. With FLC, the merchant owns the inventory and sets the price. Coupang simply charges a fee to store it, pick it, pack it, and deliver it.
Plus, they often generate advertising revenue on top of that, right? Since the sellers want to stand out in the search results.
Exactly. It is a fundamentally higher margin revenue stream. On the earnings call, management specifically called out that the marketplace and FLC offerings are growing faster than their traditional retail business. It's a structural shift in their profit profile. The merchant gets incredible reach and delivery speed, the customer gets a massive expansion of available products, and Coupang leverages the fixed infrastructure they've already built to generate much higher margin returns.
And they are taking the cash generated by this highly efficient core engine in Korea and aggressively deploying it into new frontiers. The numbers coming out of the developing offering segment, which houses their Taiwan operations, Farfetch and Coupang Eats, are just staggering.
Staggering is the right word.
They hit record segment net revenues of $1.4 billion for Q4. That is up 32% year over year. For the full year, they hit $4.9 billion.
The star of that show is undeniably Taiwan. Bom Kim noted on the call that Taiwan continues to experience hypergrowth, with revenues growing triple digits year over year. But it's not just the revenue growth, it's the sheer logistical feat they're pulling off on the ground.
They're essentially rapidly replicating their Korean playbook in a completely new geography.
Right. Bom Kim detailed that they have built out their own last-mile logistics network in Taiwan that now covers nearly 70% of the geography of the island.
And in December, roughly 75% of their volume in Taiwan was delivered the next day through their own network, without a significant increase in variable unit costs. Think about how difficult it is to build a physical logistics network in a new country. You have to lease warehouses, hire drivers, figure out local routing in highly dense urban areas, and build the physical infrastructure completely from scratch.
It's massively capital intensive.
To hit 75% next-day delivery that quickly is an operational masterclass. But that leaves us to the elephant in the room. This level of hypergrowth comes at an eye-watering cost. The developing offerings segment posted an adjusted EBITDA loss of $300 million in Q4 alone. For the full year of 2025, the losses were $995 million, nearly $1 billion in negative EBITDA.
It's a massive outflow of capital.
I have to stop you right there. $1 billion negative EBITDA run rate for a new market venture is terrifying. In the current macroeconomic climate, where capital is expensive and investors are demanding profitability, how is Wall Street tolerating a $1 billion cash incinerator in Taiwan?
Well, management is explicitly reframing this not as a burn rate, but as a highly disciplined portfolio investment. Bom Kim outlined their operating tenets on slide 19 of the presentation. Tenet number 2 is, we don't start with what looks easy. We work backwards from imagining jaw-dropping customer experiences, and we embrace the hard work required to challenge trade-offs.
Okay, that's a great mission statement, but what about the money?
That's tenet number 5. We are disciplined capital allocators. We start with small investments, then test and iterate rigorously. We invest more capital over time in opportunities that have the best long-term cash flow potential.
Are you really buying that defense? Disciplined capital allocator is a great buzzword for a CEO to use, but $1 billion is $1 billion. At some point, the music stops.
You have to look at the underlying unit economics, though. They aren't just losing money recklessly on marketing or unsustainable discounts to buy market share. They are front-loading the heavy fixed costs of building that logistics superhighway in Taiwan. They are prioritizing the foundational infrastructure and the customer experience, broad selection, low prices, next-day delivery, because their data shows that once that foundation is built and the volume scales up, the operating leverage kicks in, just exactly like it did in Korea.
So they are basically betting that the Taiwanese consumer will follow the exact same cohort spending curve as the Korean consumer. If they build a habit now, the margins will inevitably materialize in 3 to 5 years.
Exactly, and they're completely transparent about the fact that this will continue. Gaurav Anand forecasted that in 2026, they expect adjusted EBIT losses in the developing offerings segment to be between $950 million and $1 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, they are planting a flag and saying, we are going to invest another $1 billion this year because our rigorous analysis shows us the long-term cash flow potential is massive and we have the balance sheet to fund it.
It takes immense confidence to tell the market you plan to lose another $1 billion on a venture and expect them to just nod along. But there are a couple of other interesting notes in the developing offering segment that kind of help justify that confidence. They briefly touched on Farfetch, the luxury fashion platform they acquired,
Kim noted that this quarter marked the first time since the acquisition that Farfetch achieved positive year-over-year revenue growth alongside positive overall economic.
which is a turnaround, considering how troubled Farfetch was before the acquisition.
Absolutely. They see a real opportunity to combine Farfetch's global luxury assortment with Coupang's expertise in white glove logistics.
And then there's Coupang Eats, their food delivery business. Gaurav Anand mentioned that while Eats saw a moderate impact following the data incident, people probably deleting the app out of caution, the trends have stabilized. More importantly, he noted that the Eats offerings in Korea and Japan are now self-sustaining on a combined basis, despite the overall losses in the segment.
Which is a massive milestone. It means the food delivery business is no longer a drain on their cash. It's funding its own growth, leaving the bulk of that billion-dollar investment budget targeted squarely at conquering the Taiwan retail market.
Right. Now, looking further down the road, there was a fascinating moment during the Q&A portion of the earnings call. An analyst from Barclays, Jiang Xiao, asked about the AI scare trade.
Oh, this is a great question.
It really was. He asked if AI chatbots or agentic AI might eventually disintermediate e-commerce platforms like Coupang. Basically, if an AI agent can just scour the entire internet, find the absolute cheapest price, and buy things for you autonomously, do you still need a centralized platform like Coupang?
This is one of the most hotly debated topics in tech right now. Are aggregators dead in the age of AI? And Kim's answer was brilliant in its clarity. He essentially argued that while AI is incredibly powerful software, Coupang's true competitive moat is made of steel, concrete, and people moving physical inventory.
He said that ultimately customers care about selection, service, and savings. You can't deliver a physical box of groceries to a customer's doorstep using only electrons and algorithms. You need real physical retail infrastructure.
His point was that AI will be a powerful tool to amplify their logistics. It can optimize routing, improve inventory forecasting, enhance customer service chatbots, but it cannot replace the physical fulfillment network they've spent billions building.
You still need a truck.
You still need a truck. In fact, he views AI as a way to widen their moat by making their existing physical operations even more efficient and cost-effective over time. AI might change how you search for a product, but it doesn't change the physics of getting a heavy box from a warehouse to an apartment building in under 12 hours.
That confidence in their physical moat also explains their capital allocation strategy regarding their own stock. They authorized a $1 billion share repurchase program, and they noted that $243 million has been utilized to date, with 5.9 million shares repurchased just in this quarter alone.
Right. And you have to ask, why does a company buy back its own stock, especially during a turbulent quarter marked by a severe data breach and slowing growth?
It sends a strong signal to the market from management. They're essentially saying, we believe the market is overreacting to short-term noise. We believe our core business, our physical infrastructure, and our long-term trajectory are fundamentally undervalued right now, so the best return on our excess cash is to buy our own stock at a discount.
It's putting their money where their mouth is.
So what does this all mean for the future? On slide 18 of the presentation, they outlined their long-term margin opportunity. They are targeting a 10+% adjusted EBITDA margin for both the product commerce segment and the consolidated business over the long term. Right now, they're sitting at around 4.3% consolidated.
Getting to 10% plus is the promised land for retail. It's notoriously low margin, so hitting double digits is huge. And it's driven by three factors they outlined: efficiency and supply chain optimization, operating leverage as they scale their volume, and scaling accretive offerings, which goes directly back to our discussion about FLC and marketplace revenues growing faster than their traditional first-party retail.
As that mix shifts toward higher margin services, the overall margins naturally expand.
Precisely. The math works out beautifully if the volume holds.
There was also a weird tax quirk mentioned on the call that caught my eye. Gaurav Anand noted their full-year effective tax rate in 2025 was 64%. That sounds absurdly high for a global corporation.
It does sound incredibly high, but he explained that this was heavily skewed by the increasing losses in the developing offerings segment, specifically that billion-dollar investment in Taiwan. Because those are early-stage investments generating significant losses in a different tax jurisdiction, It temporarily distorts the consolidated tax rate calculations.
Well,
He assured investors that over the long term, they expect the effective tax rate to normalize closer to 25%, which will free up even more bottom line cash as the business matures and those international investments start generating taxable income rather than just losses.
makes sense. When you look at the totality of Coupang's Q4 2025, you are seeing a story of incredible dichotomy. On one hand, you have a business operating at absolute peak physical and logistical performance. They generated $34.5 billion in revenue. They are delivering 75% of their volume in Taiwan the next day. They are an unstoppable force in the physical world.
But on the other hand, that unstoppable physical force was derailed temporarily by a digital vulnerability from within. A single former employee exploiting a software development process caused massive customer panic, a sharp deceleration in top-line growth, a painful margin squeeze, and necessitated a $1.2 billion compensation program to rebuild trust.
It is a stark reminder to everyone listening that building a massive revenue machine requires a relentless obsession with the customer experience. But protecting that machine requires an equal, if not greater, obsession with security and internal controls. Think about the tightrope these mega platforms walk. They have to be frictionless to use, incredibly fast, and deeply embedded in your life to succeed. But that very scale and convenience is what makes a breach so terrifying.
It brings up a really compelling question. In an era where tech and retail companies strive for total digital convenience, where they know exactly what we buy, where we live, the routines of our daily lives, and even the entry codes to our buildings, does the sheer scale of that convenience make them inherently vulnerable to the people who build and maintain those systems?
It's a scary thought.
As we rely more and more on AI and massive physical infrastructure, is the human element, the insider threat, the one problem that algorithms and scale can never truly solve?
It's definitely something to mull over the next time you tap by and expect a package at your door by sunrise. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. You are now thoroughly well-informed on the dramatic complexities of modern global e-commerce and the fascinating Q4 2025 story of Coupang.